You've probably heard the term emerging markets thrown around all the time, especially in the news. But what does it really mean? Well, today we're going to decode that exact concept because it's something that's truly defining the future of the entire global economy. Let's dive in.
You know, for the longest time, we kind of thought of the world in these two simple boxes. You were either developed or developing. But is that really the whole story? Turns out there's this incredibly dynamic and powerful category sitting right in the middle. And once you understand it, it completely changes how you see the world.
All right, so that leads us right to the big question. What exactly is an emerging market? It's not quite a developing country anymore, but it's not a fully developed one yet either. It's this fascinating in-between stage, and getting a handle on it is absolutely key to understanding our modern economy.
Okay, probably the easiest way to wrap your head around this is to think of it like an economy going through a teenage growth spurt, right? You've got all this energy, tons of rapid change, and just massive potential. But just like a teenager, you can also get a bit of moodiness and, yeah, some volatility along the way.
So what's actually powering this economic growth spurt? Well, it pretty much boils down to three key ingredients. When you mix these together, you get the unique conditions that create a true emerging market. Let's break them down.
All right, let's get the official kind of textbook definition out of the way first. An emerging market is an economy that's on its way to becoming advanced. The big signals are usually super fast growth and a big push into industrialization. But that's just the surface, so let's get more specific.
So the recipe really has three parts. First up, rapid growth. And I mean really rapid growth. The kind of GDP expansion that older, mature economies can only dream about. Second, and this one is absolutely critical, is institutional development. Think of this as building the sturdy foundations of a modern economy. Things like reliable property rights, a stable banking system, and stock markets people can trust. And third, global integration. This is just what it sounds like. The country opens its doors to the rest of the world, which ramps up trade and brings in a lot of foreign investment.
Okay, so to really make this click, let's put these two types of markets right next to each other. The contrast really tells you everything you need to know.
What's so fascinating here is you can really see the trade-offs, right? On one hand, you've got the developed markets. They're stable, they're predictable, but the growth is kind of slow. Their institutions are solid and have been around forever. On the other hand, emerging markets give you that incredible, high-speed growth, but it comes with a bit more of a bumpy ride, precisely because their institutions are still being built and finding their groove.
And this chart, wow, it just lays it all out, doesn't it? A developed economy might be thrilled with, say, 2% GDP growth in a good year, but an emerging market? We're talking 5, 6, even 7% or more. That gap, that's everything. That's the growth gap, and it's exactly why all the big companies and investors are so focused on these places. It's the engine room for the world's future.
All right, that's enough of the theory. Let's get into some real-world examples to see what this actually looks like. And a super important thing to remember here is that there's no one-size-fits-all playbook. Every country's journey is totally unique.
So for our first case study, let's look at the classic model, which is all about becoming a manufacturing and trade powerhouse. You've probably already guessed who we're talking about.
Yep, China. So what was the formula? Well, economically, you had this historic shift of millions of people from rural farms into city factories. Politically, the government did something really smart. They set up these special economic zones that basically threw open the doors to global companies. And the cultural impact? Huge. You suddenly had this brand new, massive middle class wanting all the things that come with that. Cars, smartphones, you name it, which just poured more fuel on the fire. But here's the thing, that's not the only way to do it. Let's look at our second case study, which is all about focusing on technology and services. This is a totally different route. It's about leapfrogging over that big, heavy industrial phase and jumping right into the digital world. A great example here is India. The engine for their growth wasn't so much factories, but this incredible tech scene, especially in places like Bangalore. And this didn't just happen by accident. Politically, there was a huge push to invest in universities and build out digital infrastructure. And culturally, you had this perfect storm. A young, connected, English-speaking population, which was the ideal soil for all this tech innovation to just explode.
Okay, so we've defined the term, we've looked at a couple of different ways it can play out, but what's the big deal? Why should you care about any of this? What's the real takeaway here?
And here it is, the most important thing to remember. These aren't just individual success stories. When you put them all together, these emerging markets are literally the main engine driving the entire global economy forward.
They're changing everything, who we trade with, where our products are made, and they're completely shifting the balance of economic power for this century.
So, when you step back and look at the big picture, it's pretty clear these markets are the ones to watch. Their journey, from emerging to developed, is probably one of the most important stories happening in our lifetime. So I'll leave you with this thought. It's not a question of if these economies will change the world. They already are. The real question is, how?